for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now. Got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now. Got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked the young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Matt Ohayon, Friday night. It's the Sick Podcast. With you here is the Hebrew Hammer. The last time I spoke to you was before the NHL draft, which feels like it was forever ago at this point. So let's get into it. Sick Podcast brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. They are a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. The Sick Podcast is also brought to you by Playground, your premier gaming destination, open 24/7. Drinks are always free when you play. Over 600 machines, poker tournaments, cash games, daily promotions, free valet, and unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Just located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes away from downtown Montreal. Playground. And by La Bittt at Tibi, brewed in Quebec and a winner of a dozen international awards, La Bittt at Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bittt at Tibi, embrace your true nature. And finally, Murphy Clinic. They are an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer permanent laser hair removal, as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal's Shop Angus, and our second on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're also opening soon in Quebec City. Visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram, Murphy Clinic. All right. So the last time I spoke to you is before the Habs draft. Seems like a lot of things have happened since then. Namely, not so much with the actual roster, but some pretty big decisions were made. And training camp happened. It just got wrapped up. So let's break it all down with the Montreal Gazette's Stu Cowan. Stu, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Doing better than a lot of fans were doing last Wednesday when Carey Price got up there, butchered a name, and David Reinbacher was selected by the Canadiens. Just quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but is that the biggest reaction you've seen from Habs fans, negative reaction you've seen since Habs fans? Since when? Because for me, it went right since the PK Subban trade.
Yeah, the PK Subban trade would probably be number 1, and this would be number 2. PK was loved or hated, and people had a reaction one way or the other, thinking it was the worst trade the Habs had ever made or the best trade the Habs had ever made. So yeah, there was a big reaction to that. This one, I think it was just a case of Habs fans were looking for something to get excited about. And no knock on David Reinbacher, but he's not a player who's really going to excite you. I mean, I watched him at the development camp, and he's a solid defenseman. That's what they want. Kent Hughes projects him as a number 2 D-man moving forward, not a power play type guy. Solid defenseman. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think Canadiens fans were excited. They were hoping for, the Russian kid. They're hoping for Michkov. A lot of fans. And if not Michkov, then they were hoping for Ryan Leonard. And somebody who could score goals. It's a team that's had problems scoring goals for forever. It's been 30 years since they had a 40-goal scorer in Vinny Damphousse, and it's been since 1986 since Mats Naslund was in the top 10 in NHL scoring. It's the last time the Canadiens had a player in the top 10. So for a team that struggled to score goals, struggled in the power play, I understand why fans wanted something sexy. They wanted an offensive player. And again, no knock on Reinbacher or Kent Hughes and his guys think he's going to be a solid defenseman for many, many years to come, log a lot of minutes. And if he is, that's great. But if Michkov scores 40 goals a year in the NHL and the Canadiens are still struggling offensively, it's not going to look so good. So like with all, with any draft, we'll see 3, 4, 5 years down the road if it was the right pick.
Yeah, see, I was watching with my buddies, and leading up to the pick, I mean, it felt like the weeks leading up, no one really knew what the Canadiens were going to do. But then, kind of everyone was thinking, at least in my bubble of friends, that there's no way that if the Canadiens keep this pick, because of the millions of rumors of them trading it, be it up or down, that Kent Hughes would get up there and not say Michkov's name, not say Matvei Michkov was drafted to the Canadiens.
Or maybe Carey would have said Matvei,
and then looked back a couple times. That's right. Yeah. But like there was no way that they were going to get up there and do that. And then it happened. And they kind of had somewhat of the same reaction of people did on Twitter. And it kind of just got me thinking, when did this fan base get such a short fuse? Because I saw nonstop posts on Twitter, even, articles online from various different blogs of like, the honeymoon phase is over. This is it. We've had enough. It was just such a short fuse, especially from the season and a half that, leading up to this moment that Kent Hughes was having. It felt like he could have done no wrong.
Yeah, well, I wrote a column after the draft saying the best word to describe it from a Canadiens perspective, or a Canadiens fans perspective, was strange. It was strange that they didn't go for an offensive player. Kent Hughes talked about how the fact they only had video of Michkov, they hadn't been able to see him live, was a big red flag for them as far as not drafting him. He also talked about how the fact that the defenseman was a right-hand shot, and they needed a right-hand shot. And you hope that wasn't the Reinbacher. You hope that wasn't the final deciding factor. Okay, we're going to take a right shot defenseman instead of an offensive forward. But it's the Canadiens fan base. The Canadiens have never been worse in their history, right? I mean, they'd never finished last before. They finished 28th last year. But the interest in the team is higher than it's ever been. I might have told you this before. The Canadiens have become a reality TV show. They really, really have. It's 24/7, 12 months a year. People cannot get enough of the Canadiens. Now, for the next couple of months, there's not going to be much Canadiens news, if any, and people are going to go through withdrawal. Like, people in this city cannot get enough. And I go back to when I was younger, and I have a sister who was 5 years older than me, and like, she wasn't a hockey fan. And my parents went out on a Saturday night. We had one TV back then. I was allowed to watch the first period of the hockey game, and then she could watch whatever she wanted. Half the time, she wouldn't even let me watch the first period. As soon as my parents left, she'd put on what she wanted to watch. Now, my sister watches every game. She watches the post-game shows. She listens. There's so much of it to consume that people are consumed by the Canadiens. They really are. And a lot of other teams in the league would love to have the passionate fan base that the Canadiens have. There's a lot of positives to it, but there's negatives that come too when you see the idiotic comments and attacks on Reinbacher after he got drafted. The kid didn't do anything. He got picked. The fifth pick. You'd be upset with Kent Hughes, and as Hughes said that when he spoke to the media, you can be upset with us and the scouts. We're men. We're grown-ups. Be upset with us. But he's an 18-year-old kid who didn't do anything. We just think he's the best player, and we drafted him. So it's a case of the fan base is just so passionate now. And we saw it. Weber Subban was a big part, and we're seeing it again now. And it's just the Canadiens fans cannot get enough of the Canadiens. I mean, look, it's July 6th. We're on a podcast talking about the Canadiens. I wrote 2 stories about the Canadiens today for our website. The appetite Canadiens fans have for this team is never, ever been higher. And it's quite remarkable when you think that the team is at the low point. But you go back to when the Canadiens were winning all those Stanley Cups in the 70s and that. Like, the games were on TV once a week on a Saturday. You might get 2 games a week on TV, maybe a Wednesday on a Saturday. It wasn't like it is now, where every game's on TV, every game's analyzed before, 24-hour sports radio, podcasts like this. It's almost, the Habs have almost become a sickness in Montreal, that people are addicted to the Canadiens. And it's great from a business standpoint, but it's also what can make it difficult for guys playing here, because they're constantly under the spotlight. They're constantly scrutinized. Here's David Reinbacher, who'd never been to Montreal before in his life, didn't know anything, gets drafted, and all of a sudden he goes on social media and he's being attacked. He's like, what's going on here? But to his credit, the thing that really stood out to me about him at the development camp, on the ice he was okay, but he looked a little tired, and it's understandable. A kid, everything he's been through in the last week, he hasn't slept much, country, flying over. He had trained for the combine. He's been through a lot. So it's sort of like Slafkovsky was the same thing last year at the development camp. Kid looked a little bit tired. It's understandable. But Reinbacher is just so mature. You forget he's 18 when he was talking with the media and handling. He's not used to having the media crowd that he had, but he handled himself just so well. And he's obviously got a really high level of character, which is something the Canadians talked about. Kent Hughes talked about why they wanted him. So it looks like he'll be able to handle what's going to get thrown at him here in Montreal. It's unfortunate the way it started off for him, though.
Yeah, and one thing that'll play into him being able to handle what's being thrown at him media-wise, fan-wise, is something about Austria is not that Eastern, but it's that Eastern Europeanness of Stonewall face, short answers. That he'll be just fine. I'm not worried about him.
He's got a good sense of humor too. He's got a good sense of humor. We're asking what he knew about Montreal. Yeah. Well, it's a fashion city, so I'm probably going to have to go buy new clothes. And Slafkovsky was the same thing last year. He had a good sense of humor and able to take things in stride. But for Ryan, it was nice that fan that I wrote about who was a long-time Canadiens fan, was ready to quit being a Habs since she was so disgusted by the reaction. Yeah, to a small percentage of fans hiding behind their computers online and attacking this kid. And she asked people to send her positive comments, and she compiled them all, put them in a notebook, and presented them to Reinbacher, which was a really cool thing to do, I thought. And Reinbacher was really touched by it.
And I'm sure he was. That's got to mean. This kid is 18 years old and he's coming over here with nobody, just for camp. Yeah. And, I'm sure he was amazed to see this, the seats were packed in Brossard for
parking lot was full, the seats were full. And it's crazy. As they said, this city has a Habs sickness. People are addicted to the Canadians.
And I think, the rational thinker, because again, like you said, it's not the sexy pick. It's just not what it is. It's a right-hand shot defenseman that's going to have a very solid career. The thing that one of my friends said, he was the most rational of the bunch that I was watching. He goes, I'm not mad at the pick. They took the best defenseman available in the draft. That's never something to be mad about. It's just what we could have had.
And did they take the best player? They definitely took the best defenseman, but did they take the best? But I think part of the reason Habs were upset too is that, last year there was a lot of, there's going to be Shane Wright, is going to be Slafkovsky. People were disappointed some people were disappointed with Slafkovsky. You go back to when they drafted Kotkaniemi number 3, and people were saying maybe it should have been Tkachuk. But a lot of people were also saying it should have been Philip Zadina. So to show you what a crapshoot the NHL draft is, Zadina is getting bought out now by the Detroit Red Wings, who selected him 6th overall. So the draft is just such a crapshoot. I tell people this all the time. Go online, go to HockeyDB or go to one of those places and look at the first round picks for every team for every year, and 80% of the guys you have never heard of before.
And it's amazing because I always make this comparison whenever I watch the first round. The only 2 drafts I watch are the NHL and the NFL. Mm-hmm. And to ESPN's credit, they try to be fair when players, maybe sometimes they reveal a little bit too much, about their personal life. But I find with the NHL, there's so many players that get drafted and don't make it. Yeah. It's so different than the NFL because, basically if you're a first round pick in the NFL, you're playing the next year.
And you're making millions and millions of dollars. But they're drafting older players. That's one thing too. They're more mature. And 18-year-old kids, you don't know. Lane Hudson, 5'9" or whatever. Is he going to grow? Maybe. He's got an older brother who's 5'11", so you hope that he might. You don't know. And it's not just the physical standpoint; it's the mental standpoint. How are these guys going to be able to handle the mental grind that comes with playing in the NHL? And in Kent Hughes, that's one of the things he talked about when they made the pick this year. Is they looked at the character of the player. And Reinbacher showed us he's a very mature, confident, and humble kid. He came across just being very humble. Not as Slafkovsky was a little bit cocky last year, not in a bad way. He's got a lot of confidence in himself. You want guys to have confidence in themselves. But this kid's just a little bit more humble, a little bit more laid back, it seems. A little bit more mature also. Not that Slafkovsky's not mature, but he seemed, to me, that was the impression I got of him, is that skill-wise, he's not going to play in the NHL next year. He's going to go back and play in Switzerland. He's going to play with Laval. But from that standpoint, from a mental standpoint of handling everything, he looks like he would be ready to play in the NHL now.
Right.
Just handling all this stuff to be thrown at him. That's not going to happen. I'm sure as I said, I'm sure he's going to go back and play in Switzerland or play in Laval. But that's one of the reasons Kent Hughes wanted this kid was the character.
Well, and the final point I was going to make was that, when it comes to the NHL, I find when ESPN covers the NFL, they're very fair. The one thing that comes to mind is, when teams take a quote unquote reach, I'll remember when the Patriots 2 years ago drafted an offensive lineman named Cole Strange, and they straight up on the broadcast go, I don't understand why they did this.
Yeah.
Why did they do this?
Yeah.
This guy is way below down on the rankings. Could have gotten him later. Whereas I find, you're in the 5th round of the NHL draft, and people are talking, the analysts are talking as if these are still future Hall of Famers when the percentages are showing.
No,
they're not going to make.
Well, I wrote a story before the draft, going back to the 8 years in a row, or whatever it was, where the Canes are total bust with their draft picks. So aside with Louis LeBron going on. And I posted little YouTube videos of the draft selections, and they were called up, and the commentators announced the comments and everything. And somebody emailed me, everybody in the media all said this guy was great. Every guy was great when they drafted him. Yeah, because they were a 1st-round draft pick. They're one of the 30 best hockey players in the world for their age group at that time. People forget it's at that time. As an 18-year-old, they're one of the best. Reinbacher is one of the best 5. The Canadians think he's like one of the 5 best hockey players in the world at his age, and he is, or 10 anyway, if you want to, But that doesn't mean that at age 22 he is, and that's one of the things before last year's draft. Ken Hughes was telling the scouts, I don't want you to pick who's going to be the best player now. I want you to pick who's going to be the best player 5 years from now, and that's what they were hoping for with Slafkovsky. And it's so easy to forget, how young. Kotkaniemi celebrated his 23rd birthday today. I put a thing on Twitter, and somebody said, "Oh my God, he's only that young?" Yeah, he's 23 years old. He's been 5 years in the NHL. He's a kid. He's a young kid. Yeah. So people are saying, "Oh, he's a bust. He's a write-off. He's useless." Not necessarily. Let's wait and see another couple of years down the road. If at 26, 27, he's still producing like he is now, you can say that. But he's a kid. He's still a kid at 23 years old. And in the NFL, he would have been drafted like 2 years ago, maybe, right?
Yeah, he would have been drafted 2 years ago. And if he had a season like he did in his rookie year, he would have had one more chance in his second year. And he wasn't able to do it in the NFL. That's just the way it goes.
That's where the NFL works. And no guaranteed contracts. You're gone. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's talk about training camp. Lots and lots of Infinity's lifetime's worth of information on Reinbacher and Hudson were the 2 main stars that everyone had their eyes on training camp. But I want to know who caught your eye other than those 2 names at training camp that you were like, man, this guy's got a chance this year.
Logan Mayo was really good. Like Logan Mayo stood out. He looks like he's big. He can skate. He can move. He's got a shot. He's got good vision. I mean, again, it was only drills in 4-on-4. We didn't see them in like a real game, but he really stood out. Like he's a big kid who moves really, really, really well. He stood out. Joshua Roy, who I wrote about earlier today, he stood out too. I mean, there's a kid. He's got, he was the number 1 overall pick at the QMJHL draft. It was 2019. Was known for not working that hard on and off the ice. Didn't work out with him with the St. John Sea Dogs. They traded him, and then he turned himself around. He got drafted. The Canes drafted him in the 5th round. So he went from a number 1 overall pick in the Q to a 5th round pick in the NHL. And then the next year he led the Q in scoring. And now he's played for Team Canada the last 2 years. He's Connor Bedard's line mate at the most recent World Championship. Connor Bedard said he was one of the smartest players he's ever played with. And Adam Nicholas, the director of player development, said the same thing. At the development camp. He's really good hockey IQ. He was also telling me that at the World Juniors, he played PK for the first time in his life. He said, I'd never played PK at Pee-wee, Bantam, Midget. And the World Junior coach, Team Canada coach, said, I want to put you on the PK. And he was like, really? And he did it, and he did it really well. So as he was saying, he's proud of how his defensive game has improved. He's shown he can play better defensively. He's shown he can play on the PK. He's shown he can play with a super talented player like Connor Bedard. Some people think that's easy. It's not always easy. It's not always easy to play with Sidney Crosby. It's not always easy to play with Mario Lemieux. It's not always easy to play with Connor McDavid. These guys see the game different from everybody else. So to try and know where they're going to go and try and play with these guys, that's a skill in itself to be able to play with them. So you wonder moving forward. He looked good. Philip Massar, who looked really good at the development camp last year, he looked better than Slavkovsky, a lot better to me.
Yeah.
Struggled a bit this year in junior. He went to Kitchener. But he talked about how it was, he had played the 2 years before in a men's league in Europe. And he said he went to junior and he said it wasn't as professional, wasn't as much professionalism as what he was used to, adjusting to a new language, adjusting to a new country. He said his billet family was great. They really helped him a lot. He had a good World Junior Championship when he was back in more comfortable surroundings with his, his own countrymen. But he looked good again. He's really skilled. I mean, he's not the biggest guy, but he's got a lot of skills. I asked him where he thinks he's going to play this season. He said Laval. He said the conversation the Canadians had after the training camp last year was they wanted him to play junior 1 year just to acclimatize himself to the culture and being in Canada more so than anything else, getting used to the small rink. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be in Laval this year. He'll probably be playing on the same line with Joshua Roy. Wouldn't surprise me, or something, or they'll be 1-2 or whatever, and they're both wingers. So they caught my eye. Luke Tuck also. He's a big kid. He looked good, but I mean the star Lane Hudson was just like head and shoulders talent.
Right, he's the price of admission.
Yeah, right. It looked like he was playing shinny against his buddies on the outdoor rink, flying up and down and here and there. So the big question with him is, can he gain weight? I mean, 5'9" isn't the big concern, but he's like 158 pounds, and I just don't think you can play defense in the NHL at 158 pounds. He's got to gain at least 20 pounds.
So that's a big thing with Lane Hudson, because I know obviously with good reason, a ton of people are very, very excited about him as a prospect of the Canadians. My question is, between the two names that you mentioned on the blue line being Lane Hudson and Logan Mailloux, do you see the power play quarterback, the ever elusive future power play quarterback between the two of them?
Yeah, well, I mean, you wonder if Marty St. Louis is going to go with 4 forwards and 1 D, or if he goes with 3 and 2. I mean, they could maybe see them both. But Mailloux's got a big shot, and that's interesting because he hit Lane Hudson in the shoulder with one, and Lane Hudson was running a full cage, right, playing university hockey. And I asked him, "Are you worried you're going to get that one in the face?" He went, "Yeah, I hit him right off the shoulder. Left a big puck mark on the shoulder also." Oh, wow. So Lane Hudson's got that vision, and he just sees the game, and the vision is so good. And, again, we were talking about the draft being a crapshoot. He said he had seen his doctor, and his doctor said his growth plates are still open. He's still hoping he's going to grow more. As I mentioned, his older brother's 5'11". So if he can grow to be 5'11" and 175, 180 pounds, that's basically the same size as Cale Makar. And that's the guy that he's always compared to, that similar type of style and skating and ability to go up and down the ice. So to me, he's played 1 year already at university. If I was the Canadians, things could change depending on how things move forward, but he's a guy I think that could, like Jordan Harris, 4 full years of university would really help him just as far as developing off the ice. You're playing university hockey, you're only playing 30-odd games. You got lots of time to eat well, sleep well, train hard in the gym, put on some weight, fill out, and I think that's the best route to go with Lane Hudson. Don't rush him. I go back to Louis LeBlanc. The Canadians drafted him, and he spent 1 year at Harvard. I remember the first time I saw him in like a golf shirt or t-shirt, I couldn't believe how skinny he was. Like, man, this guy's got to put on weight. Went 1 year at Harvard, then he left and played junior, which I think was a huge mistake. He's another guy who could have used 2, 3, even 4 years of university to fill out and develop and get stronger. The thing with the NHL, it's all the guys aren't big, but all the guys are strong. And Jaden Struble, another guy who was at the camp, he was their second-round pick the year they picked Cole Caulfield in the first round. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's ripped. He's built like an NFL defensive back. He's just ripped. And he was saying the biggest adjustment he had leaving university last year and going to play in Laval was the strength of the other guys. He said, in university, I shove a guy into the boards. Usually he falls down or I knock him off the puck. You do it in the AHL, they don't move. And that's not even going up to the NHL. That's just what a jump it is from university hockey to the AHL level. So to play in the NHL, no matter how big or small, you just have to be strong. I look at a guy like Paul Byron, not the biggest guy, but he's ripped. He's built. He's strong. Brendan Gallagher, same thing. Cole Caulfield, the physique on Cole Caulfield from the first time I saw him the day he was drafted to now is totally different. He's put on probably 15 pounds of muscle since then. He's built a little bit like Paul Byron now.
Yeah.
So those are the things that, not rushing prospects, giving them the time. Jordan Harris is almost a poster boy for how 4 years of university has never hurt anybody. You're better to have a guy spend too long developing than not enough time developing. So for Lane Hudson, as anxious as Canadiens fans might be to see him play in the NHL, he's a guy I would really take my time and even give him, like I said, the 3-4 years in university. Let him be physically ready. Hopefully he does grow to be 5'11". He might by that time. He could definitely put on 15 pounds in that time by working out in the gym and training hard. And then he'd be in a better position to step in and try and play in the NHL.
Another guy who I've seen pop up on a lot of people's way too early opening day lineups, even preseason lineups. I don't know if he was at the camp. I would imagine he was Sean Farrell. And I remember, so when you mentioned putting on weight, because I remember watching, I don't know if it was his first game or it would have been his only game, because I was in the building on the last game of the season against the Boston Bruins, and I saw him out there, and I'm like, yeah, okay, he could skate. He had some good space a couple times to rip a shot, and I just found when he took a shot, by NHL standards at least, I'm watching guys like Charlie McAvoy rip shots like it's nobody's business, and then I watch him take a shot, kind of looked like one of those rainbow shots that you would see, and that's just the way it felt. So I feel like he's another player that I know he was in the lineup because of extenuating circumstances. But
he signed his contract and he wanted to burn off the first year. He wasn't at the development camp. I think it's because he had such a long season with what went on. They probably wanted the summer off. But yeah, talented. I mean, development camp last year, he stood out with his skill level. Him and Matar were the two most skilled forwards, I thought, at that camp. But that's including Slavkovsky in that group. These two guys, the skill level was higher. But when he got called up to the NHL, and you see him in the locker room, he's small, like he's little, and it's going to be hard for him to play in the NHL at that size. It really is, unless you have like the Cole Caulfield shot or something that's just so superior that you can get by on that. I think Sean Farrell's going to have a hard time making it in the NHL unless he can really get a lot more physically stronger. Like I was saying, what Jaden Struble was saying, getting pushed off the puck. Like he's pretty easy to push off the puck right now from the NHL defense. It's like swatting a fly almost. So he's just got to get stronger. He really has, and especially lower body. And the same with Lane Hudson. The thing I was surprised by, I saw just how skinny his legs are. And the modern day hockey player, most of their weight is in their butt and their legs. Nick Suzuki, you look at Sidney Crosby, Cole Caulfield now too. He's put a lot of weight on in his lower body. That's
the coach of the Montreal Canadiens, Martin. That famous picture of him when they were playing the Canadiens.
People, how could Martin St. Louis play in the league at that size? Because his lower body his legs were tree trunks. It was hard to knock him off the puck. Sean Farrell, it's easy to knock him off the puck. So he's got to do a lot of strength work, especially in his legs. Same with Lane Hudson. His legs are really skinny. He's got to build up a little more muscle in his legs. And the thing with Hudson too, and the thing with this team now, you're around this team, and Marty St. Louis keeps saying he wants everyday people. He wants like good guys in the room, and man, they have a lot of them. That the guys in this locker room now compared to a few years ago, there's a lot of good young people. Caden Gooley, Jordan Harris, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield. They're good. Sam Montembeau. They're nice guys to be. They're good guys to be around. Like they're Arbor Jackeye, and you look at their Reinbacher, the same type of thing. So they're trying to build a group of good hockey players, but also good people. And some fans might go, who cares if they're good people or not? But when you're in a locker room as close as these guys are, and you're together every day, you travel together, you're in the same plane, you're in the same buses, you're in the same hotels, you're in the same this. One guy they don't get along, it can change things. And that was one of the problems with PK Subban. I didn't think it was PK Subban's fault. PK was PK, but he wasn't guys. He bothered guys for whatever reason it was. So this personality didn't fit in. And now they just have a team. I've said this before. They're like a group of brothers in the locker room. They really are. Excuse me. They have so many of these guys now are 22, 23, 24 years old. And they just look like they're having fun on the ice, off the ice. You see them in practices. You bump into them sometimes if you're on the road. They just seem to be a good group of guys, and I think the Canadiens put a strong emphasis on that moving forward. They want a really tight team on and off the ice, And they seem to be going in that direction.
Well, I mean, I hope it continues that way. And you know what? I know the development camp is a lot of drills, 4-on-4. It's a lot of maybe even some off ice work, whatever it may be. But I hope that came through at least as a viewer to the camp. That still, like as they're doing these, they're having fun while doing it. That's got to go throughout the whole way.
Well, the other thing, the biggest change, the change in this development camp from what it used to be under the previous management, they used to bring in like 80 guys and make 4 teams and just scrimmage. That was basically what the development camp was. They had 1 scrimmage in the 3 days, and it was 4-on-4. It wasn't even a 5-on-5 scrimmage. All the drills were like trying to they were trying to teach them how to find space and use space and create space. It was more about the mental hockey IQ. Adam Nicholas talked about that. They're trying to, can you teach hockey IQ? They're trying to. They're trying to show guys like the more time and space you can create for yourself, the better player you're going to be. And that's what this camp was about. It was 2-on-2 drills, puck battle drills, the importance of winning puck battles. It wasn't just let's play a scrimmage for an hour and take a shower and go home. There was about 10 coaches on the ice or instructor at all times. They were videotaping the drills. Adam Nicholas was videotaping every drill. And if a kid wasn't doing the drill right or screwed up, you could pull him aside and show him the video. Because as you said, some guys have been at the camp before. They know the drills. They can do it. Some guys, it's the first drill. And for any kid who's been to a hockey camp when they were younger, I went to a couple and you're doing the drills and you're like, oh, okay, what do we do here? And you never want to be the first guy in case you screwed it up type of thing. So they've really, the development process has really changed. And I asked Rob Ramage, director of player personnel, what's the biggest change you've seen in this development camp? And he said, well, I remember the first time I came to these development camps in Brossard, it was like fight night in Brossard. It was just scraps. Guys were fighting, trying to earn a spot, showing how tough they were. And boy, night and day, what a difference to what it is now. It's a really, development's been one of Canadian's biggest problems for a long time. Yeah. They're changing that. And you see it at the development camp. You just see the hands-on instruction that they have. Mary-Phil Poulain's out there watching and talking to guys, best female hockey player in the world. They know what they want to do development-wise. And a lot of the drills they did were the same type of drills Marty St. Louis does. 4-on-4, 2-on-2, tight spaces. And that was intentional. They want these kids, when they come into training camp, the ones that are coming to the real training, to be prepared for what the drills are going to be like. And any kid who showed up at this camp not in shape, man, I feel sorry for them. Because it was, I was shocked at how fast, how intense, and how physical the drills were. The drills are more intense and physical than the scrimmage was. It was like they were going. And the first day they had them going for 2 hours, basically nonstop. The kids were sucking wind at the end of it. And it was hard for some. Philip Massar told me he hadn't been on the skates for 2 weeks before that. David Reinbacher had been flying all over the place. There was guys that were pretty tired by the end of it. But the Canadians have a real – it's interesting to watch. It's fun to watch how they're teaching these kids now, as opposed to just throwing a puck on the ice and saying, go scrimmage.
And last one before I get you out of here. I appreciate you doing this, of course, as always. The Canadians drafted 3 goalies in the draft. Never seen that before.
No, that was one of them being things.
Well, one of them being Jacob Fowler out of the USHL. A lot of people said, he wasn't it wasn't really like a Connor Bedard situation with respect to goalies, where it's like consensus number 1. A lot of people had him number 1. How did he look at the camp?
He looked good. I mean, it's sort of harder to tell with goalies because the drills are going on and they're facing 1,000 shots or whatever, right? So there's gonna quite a few pucks in the go. But he's a big kid. I mean, he might be too big. He's gonna have to lose a little bit of weight. They talked about that. But yeah, he looked good. I mean, the goalies are being a goalie in some of these drills. They must talk about the players being tired. I mean, they're facing shot after shot after shot. It's all a little blue line in. So it's sort of hard to get a read on what if he was scouting a goalie off of a practice is a little bit more difficult. But no, he looked like he's a big kid. He fills up a lot of the net, and that's the new NHL goalie, right? There's no more Rogie Vachons out there who are 5'9" or 5'10" playing in the NHL now.
Yeah, it felt like the Canadians.
I have it here. He's 6'1". He's 6'1", 223. That's a little. He's gonna have to
for 18 years old. Jeez, yeah. I mean, just in terms of what they always say is, you hit on 1 draft pick or 2 draft picks out of the 7 you're given, it was a good draft. Felt like the Canadians really put an emphasis on throwing a lot of wet spaghetti at the wall, seeing what's going to stick with the goalies in that draft.
Well, it's obvious Caden Primo, they don't look at him as a goalie of the future. Yeah. I mean, he's going to have to clear waivers if he goes to Laval. They might lose him. I don't know if anybody's going to claim him. I mean, he's been good in the AHL. He hasn't been good in the NHL. I imagine a team sort of desperate for goaltending or hoping might claim him if or when he goes on waivers. But going back to Jacob Fowler for a second, excuse me, as I was mentioning, he's going to have to trim some pounds off. He's playing the USHL. He's going to university next year in the NCAA. As I mentioned before, that's where you eat well, sleep well, train well. So that will happen. I'm not worried about that.
All right. Well, there you have it. Stu, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy this weekend. It's supposed to be nice outside, maybe a little bit too hot, but try to get out there, because like we always say, in the winter we complain about the cold, so let's not complain about the summer. I
never complain about the heat because I just think about February.
Well, there you go. Stu, thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
All right, last things last before I get you all out of here and I get out of here is shop all your sports license lifestyle apparel, including hoodies, caps, and tees of your favorite teams from all major leagues at sportsbuffshop.com. Use the code SICK10 for 10% off all their items. All right, thank you very much for joining us on this Friday evening as per usual. My name is Matt Ohayon. We'll catch you next time.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVie.tv, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.